and welcome to HR Celebrity. Thank you very much for joining me today. To everybody who's tuned into the channel, we've got a very exciting broadcast for you. I'm so excited to have James Mckenzie, the MD of Training Force, as well as Tiffany Reed, a senior HR consultant from Compliance Hub, joining us today. But before we get into the guests, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we started up this channel. The reason we started up this channel was really just to bring to the forefront HR. As the pandemic has kicked in, as we've gone into lockdown, we've realized that we cannot do anything without our people. So people are the most important part of the organization. Human resources, or HR, has become such a crucial role in terms of delivering process, delivering protocols, delivering so many facets in terms of running our business and handling how we're going to do things into the future. It's so important for us to really bring to the forefront businesses, professionals, anybody who's innovating or who's adapting to the space that we now find ourselves in. So without further ado, we're going to get James Mckenzie on the line, who's given us a little bit of a precursor video in terms of what is Training Force, or who is Training Force, and we're going to jump right into that. So thank you very much again. Please don't forget to subscribe and please be part of the conversation.
In 2013, Training Force was awarded a contract to train 90 unemployed youth from in and around the Klerksdorp area in bricklaying skills. This was an extremely exciting opportunity for Training Force on a number of levels, one of which is we were to start an artisan skills training center in the area. This gave us a perfect opportunity for a public-private partnership. So we approached the Department of Education and Sports Development Northwest Province and Old Ituseng Primary in Joburton. Together we agreed that Training Force would occupy and upgrade an old part of the school. In 2013, the training center then opened.
Since 2013, we have been committed to improving the facilities at this school. We have uplifted classrooms, installed electricity in a section of the school, built a practical training area, provided security to the school, donated office furniture, and provided numerous jobs and much more.
This opportunity makes me motivated. I think South Africa needs this type of opportunity in order to empower youth and many peers.
Ke motlotlo thata go ba one of baithuti ba mo Training Force ba ba tlileng go ithuta bricklaying, ba ba tlileng go qualifyang go ba di artisan ga ba fetsa, which is mo Training Force ke ithutile di experience tse dingata tse leng gore ke ithutile gore ke kgone go aga fast, ke be ke kgone le go ploma di frame tsotlhe tse di nna mo kagong.
The long-term value of this initiative will not only benefit the school but also the community. To date, we have trained over 300 male and female artisans in bricklaying, carpentry and plumbing. This is one of many examples where Training Force has brought meaningful improvement to communities within which we operate.
Training Force, a workforce holdings company.
And we have James on the line with us. Thank you very much for joining us, James. James, before we begin, thanks.
How's it, Brian?
How's it? Good. James, before we begin, let's talk a little bit about yourself and Training Force.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I recently joined, or came back to Training Force, should I say. I used to work for the business about 10 years ago, and then I left and moved to Barloworld. For about 7 years, I was in the Barloworld transport business, and when the two businesses merged, it became Barloworld Logistics Africa between the two businesses, and I was the
Sorry,
HR
James, let me
executive.
just cut you for 2 seconds there. The screen is blocking you. Just
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, much better. Thank you. Sorry, carry on.
So like I said, I left Training Force, and then I joined Barloworld, and I was there for about 7 years as the HR executive in the transport business. It was during exciting times. there were a lot of acquisitions and mergers between a number of transport businesses, and I worked with a dynamic leadership team and gained a lot of experience in that space. And then recently I came back to Training Force, and so I've been on both sides of the, from a training provider perspective.
Both sides of the table.
In exactly. So, and it's great to be back in Training Force, and I think some of the learnings I've had from the working in corporate, I believe I've bring back into Training Force in terms of where we need to go as an organisation.
James, I suppose one of the questions then I have for you is, what is special about Training Force? Why go back to Training Force?
Sure. So, look, I mean, from a personal perspective, I've always been really passionate about people development and growth. So, I think at the heart of Training Force is really around caring about people and their development and growth. I think the added advantage we've always had at Training Force is that we've been part of a bigger group in terms of workforce holdings, and I think that's enabled a lot of our learners to get practical exposure, to get people into work. And I think some of the biggest barriers, especially the young people have in the country, is to be able to get practical exposure, to get job opportunities. I was fortunate at Barloworld to be able to create an academy within the logistics and transport space where we created a similar type of model where we were able to bring young people and give them practical exposure and into the workplace. And I see similar things in terms of Training Force, because we're not working in isolation. We're within a broader group of organizations where we can really give learners meaningful workplace experience.
So obviously, we've just seen the video in terms of what you've done in the Klerksdorp region, the vocational training there. Tell us a little bit more about that project, and then other technical skills that Training Force can deal with, or how you see technical skills panning out into the future. Well, I think without getting into the Klerksdorp project, which is an incredible project, I think this lockdown's highlighted the importance of vocational and trades, because if you look at essential services, the services that have kept this economy running are vocational trades. It's the truck drivers, it's the tradesmen, it's the plumbers, it's the teachers, it's the nurses. That's the backbone of any economy, and those are the skills that any country requires to be successful. And so, if anything, it's highlighted the importance of vocational trades during this time. I think, prior to the lockdown, the trades and vocational occupations haven't been given the kudos that they deserve. And I think this has actually highlighted those vocational roles and actually put them on the pedestal where they should be. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. How do you think COVID-19 has impacted training? In South Africa. I think there's obviously been an impact internationally. I think, and every country's had its own dynamics to deal with. I think what it's done for our country, it's highlighted further inequalities. Over 50% of our higher education students in this country come from poor households. And some of those communities they come from don't have access to basic services. And I think what this has done is it's highlighted the inequalities in our education system even further, in terms of access to, trying to roll out an online learning solution, a first world solution with potentially third world challenges. So you don't think the solution's fit to purpose then? Well, I think there's opportunity. I think it's very much we need to look at our situation and say what works for South Africa. And I think certain things, such as ensuring quality and equal, from access to quality content, there shouldn't be a differentiator. People having access to data becomes a human rights issue, and it becomes something that everyone has, because all we're doing is some people will have access to it and others won't. So I think what it's done, it's highlighted the educational inequalities, and it's also highlighted where the skills deficits are because of the skill requirements at this time, specifically around essential services. So although the economy has shrunk considerably and a number of companies haven't come back on board,
there are still skill shortages in the essential services because there are not enough vocational skilled people to supply a lot of those industries.
And obviously, online isn't really going to match vocational training. I don't know, unless you guys have a solution, but from my perspective, how can you train somebody to be a plumber on the internet? I mean, I suppose you can look at YouTube videos, but you're never really going to have the hard skill unless you train face to face. Or am I incorrect in stating that?
No, I think when we talk about online, I think it's a broad thing. I think this is an opportunity for us to move into the digital transformation space. I think, like I said, it's an opportunity for us to re-engineer or literally radically transform our education system and actually get back to the basics and get learners and users time to train them up in the building blocks, go back to the NATED qualifications, get people in terms of those technical qualifications. The challenges that we're going to have is that a lot of the practical training requires workplace exposure. And now what's happening in the country is because of the lockdown, learners are not going to have access to workplaces. And I think this is where digital transformation is going to play a critical role. So the likes of virtual reality and augmented reality, gamification, where we can actually create practical exposures and experiences for people that don't have, or young people that don't have access to workplaces. To take an ADT, an articulated dump truck, off a mine and get a learner to understand the components or the engine or working of a Volvo truck or Mercedes-Benz coat, an Actros, for example. It's very difficult for people that don't have access to expensive machinery and equipment to be able to get that practical exposure. And I think the digital transformations, from a digital AI, augmented virtual reality is going to play a significant role in bridging that gap. But I think the key thing here is not for us to continue and offer the same thing, but really relook at what skills we're focusing in on. And I think this lockdown period has really highlighted, for me personally, but I think for a lot of people, the importance of the vocations. Yeah. So let's use digital transformation, but specifically to support vocational education and training in the country. And that goes from a school level, getting the technical schools back online, getting our colleges supported. And obviously, as training forces, as an organization, we have a critical part to play in that transformation.
I agree with you. It's vitally important that we enable people to create their own businesses through training by creating true skills that they can actually take and earn a living out of. But do you feel that our learners or South African learners really have a chance, given the challenges that we face around access to online, access to technology, access to computers even? In many cases, we all know a lot of our learners, or a lot of our adult learners have never even seen a computer.
I think it's going to bring the right behavior. I mean, I was chatting to some colleagues earlier on the cost of masks. I remember 2 months ago, I think the cost of a mask was about 20 Rand, or I'm not sure what it was. Now you can buy a mask for 6.50 Rand, and I think they're going to keep being, they're going to keep being dropped. And I think the same thing around technology and data. I think we're going to have a situation in the country where this is going to drive data costs down. There's going to be more competition. It means that more people are going to have access to things that they wouldn't have had access to in terms of data. So I think it's going to drive a lot of although the economy is under huge pressure at the moment, I think a lot of the key things are going to be driven. I also think there's going to be a shift, Brian, in people looking and saying, actually, do I want to go and work for a job in a company for the next 15 years, or can I start my own company? And I think it's the entrepreneurial side. Even when people have been working at home, I think a lot of people have come up and said, how can I earn extra incomes? And it's getting people to think differently. And I think South Africa, as a country, we need to start saying, actually, how do we create more entrepreneurs at a school level, post-school level? And I think this isolation period has got a lot of people thinking across the country to say, how do we actually maintain ourselves and not be reliant on big corporates?
And I think we've seen that again in the vocational space, which has been the easiest transition for people to go from big corporate to to micro enterprise and self-sustainability, in that they can offer basic services to friends, family, neighbors in the form of bricklaying, plumbing, welding, or whatever the talent or skill that they have is. So yeah, there's definitely opportunity for that transition, which is very exciting, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's extremely exciting. Yeah,
Cool.
I think this, this. I know there's a lot of negativity, and understandably we're all under huge pressure. But I think this is really an opportunity for us to relook education in the country, and I think vocational education specifically. And what it's done is it's got us to go back to basics. And I think as a country we need to use this time wisely and get our foundations, because things will change and it will end. And the economy will come back, and that stage will be stronger. We'll have more skills. We'll have people that will be able to contribute, and hopefully we'll have a lot more entrepreneurs in the country that can contribute to our growth.
I can only hope. James, thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy man, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. But we really appreciate having you here, and hopefully anybody who's watching can learn something from this. If anybody wants to contact James, I have included his email address in the link below, as well as they can get you on trainingforce.co.za. So thank you very much again, James. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brian. Keep well. Cheers.
Thanks, John. That was James Mckenzie, MD of Training Force. James, again, thanks for your time. Guys, next up we've got Tiffany Reed of Compliance Hub. We're just going to get her on the line quickly. So, yeah, Tiffany's got a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and she's going to be talking about the black sheep of HR, and we're going to figure out in a minute what that really means. So let's just wait for her to answer. Don't know if you can hear Hi, Tiffany. Tiffany, we can't see you. We can't see you, Tiffany.
Hello.
Hi, Tiffany.
Sorry.
We can't see you. Come on. Okay.
There we go.
Perfect. Tiffany, welcome. Welcome to HR Celebrity. Thank you very much for being on the show, or on the broadcast, or the channel, whatever you want to call it. We really appreciate your time. Tiffany, you are talking about the black sheep of HR, and I wondered if you could share some insight in terms of what is meant by that. Or before we even get into that, actually, Tiffany, if you could tell us a little bit about Compliance Hub, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Firstly, thank you very much for having me as a guest on HR Celebrity. I've got an educational background in industrial psychology, which is where I was first exposed to HR many, many years ago. And since then, I think the titles that have been given to me in the workplace have been unofficial psychologist, event planner, peacemaker, lawyer, teacher. So those are kind of some titles that do surround an HR practitioner. My HR career has spanned over 15 years, where I've been exposed to the full HR spectrum. I've got a special interest in employee engagement, industrial relations, and performance management. I'm currently employed by Compliance Hub as an HR consultant. And then I think if I've got to look at a few words that explain what Compliance Hub actually does, it would be where innovation meets your company's compliance. So that would just kind of sum up Compliance Hub.
Okay. Fantastic. So if anybody has any HR or consulting requirements, I have included Tiffany's details in the description below as well. So you can get her directly on her email for anything in the compliance and HR space. So Tiffany, jumping straight in, what is meant by the black sheep of HR? And further to that, what in your definition how would you describe HR generally?
I think HR really does encompass quite a lot within a company and has changed over the last few years. But I think if I've got to look what HR actually is and what HR does, I would like to look at it as a life cycle. So we would look at first attraction, so you're attracting employees to come to your company. Then you'll go through a recruitment process. You'll onboard them. There'll be some development, some training. Then retention, you'll come up with different retention strategies. Sorry, got lots of thoughts about retrenchment on the brain at the moment.
Fair enough. I think it's a very popular topic at the moment.
Definitely. And then separation. Anything that will terminate the employer relationship. So that's pretty much what the life cycle of HR actually means. But in the last couple of years, we have seen that included in HR, we've had a lot of labor relations and HR compliance. Those have also fitted into what HR is all about.
Okay, so you've been dealing with a lot of have I cut you off?
A lot. Why I have likened the black sheep as being something that has, as HR practitioners have recently encountered, and that I want to dig in today, is that a black sheep is something that causes, chaos, destruction, and a deviation from the norms. So I think a black sheep, which is currently for all of us in the world, just the world, in any company, in any business, and especially for employees and employers alike, would be COVID. So I think it would be only apt that today we discuss the black sheep and how it's affected the workplace. So that's, I think, let's get stuck in and let's shed some light on that.
So what do you think the major impacts have been? I mean, I trust you've been dealing predominantly with TERS at the moment, being in the compliance space. What has your experience been around that?
I think it's really received a lot of bad publicity. I think some of it has been valid and other parts of it not valid. I think the process has been marred by a lot of incorrect information. There have been incomprehensible instructions that have been given. There have been a lot of technical glitches on the system. And then there's been, I think you could say, failure by the Department of Labour and Employment in terms of the service delivery with it. So I think it has caused a lot of frustration for employers.
So I know a lot of people have been battling with the formulas, struggling to figure out what it is that each employee, obviously employees are on various bands within organizations, and the formulas seem to be a bit of a challenge to a lot of companies. Have you guys at Compliance Hub sort of come up with any solutions around simplifying that?
Yes, we have. We've worked with a service provider that has developed a TERS benefit calculator, because I think a big hurdle that companies have experienced is that the first application that was opened was only catered for lockdown level 5. So that was, you could only claim until the 30th of April. Now May is only going to open apparently on the 15th of May, which would be tomorrow. So therefore,
gives us very little time.
Sorry?
I said it gives us very little time to put in our applications.
Exactly, and also, it's very difficult now to be able to say how much money you can, you could get from the benefit. So at least if you put the amounts, employee's salary into the benefit calculator, you'll be able to gauge how much money you will get back from the benefits. So it's a very useful tool to be able to make use of.
Cool. And if anybody needs that tool, they can contact you directly on the email link below. So obviously coming from TERS comes short time, comes possible retrenchments. Are you guys anticipating a lot of labor disputes or legal issues, CCMA hearings, into the coming months post the lockdown? And how do you think HR departments can pandemic-proof their organizations to avoid such difficulties and backlash from the lockdown?
We are most definitely anticipating a lot of them. I think we already have experienced some of them. I know that I personally have conducted and consulted with a number of employees on behalf of employers with regards to what we refer to as Section 189 processes for retrenchments. So definitely operational dismissals are going to come up. I also think we might face what we refer to as misconduct dismissals because of employees not being well enough if they've contracted COVID-19 to report back to the workplace. That might be another one. And then I also think dismissal for misconduct, which is dismissals based on, insubordination or things like that, with employees are not wearing, their protective personal protective equipment or not abiding by the company's rules when the companies are all now, in terms of the Disaster Management Act, when companies are opening now, they have to conform to all those kind of things. So I would like to just encourage employers that they need to be mindful, that they have to conform to all of this, because otherwise they're going to face huge penalties by the Department of Labour as the workplaces are beginning to open.
So I suppose we got to get those policies and procedures in place. I suppose we've got to get those policies and procedures in place and make sure that we are ready for what is the inevitable in terms of how to handle these sort of circumstances. I suppose one of the other challenges is how do you manage people who are working from home in an environment where there is productivity needed, but we don't actually know what our staff is up to in many cases.
Most definitely. That's why policies need to be put in place. Do you have a remote working policy? Is your health and safety policy up to date? Are your employment contracts all up to date? Do you have a pandemic policy? Because I think in South African labour law, it hasn't catered at all for pandemics. So this really has put in a lot of challenges, legal challenges, for both attorneys and for employers to have to deal with the pandemic. So I really urge employers to seek both consultants and legal advice when they are drafting their policies and procedures, just to make sure that they're all up to date, just to prevent any problems going forward. But the policies and procedures, I really can't emphasize the benefit of those enough. And also just perhaps to update job descriptions. Just because an employee is working at home doesn't mean at all that they're absolved in any way from performing any of their duties.
And do you think... Sorry, carry on.
No, that's it. In terms of that.
I was saying, in terms of that, do you think employee performance benchmarks need to be altered or corrected? KPIs, targets for salespeople. Do you believe that businesses need to look at adapting their targets or performance benchmarks in terms of the crisis that we are now facing? As the possibility is that if they don't, they might lose out on a good employee, but their benchmarks have been catered at the wrong time.
I think it may well definitely be appropriate and actually necessary to adjust the benchmarks accordingly. Since there's been a dramatic shift in the economic forecast which can actually render a lot of these targets impossible. And as you've just mentioned, Brian, especially with sales staff. So to have a sales target that someone had to meet 10,000 Rand, say, for example, a month, it's really going to be impossible now for them to actually meet that if your company is not, classified as an essential service now for that employee to be able to go out and do that. So it really wouldn't be fair if an employee gets jeopardized as part of that. So they definitely do need to be, looked at. I would suggest that. And then also just on another note, I think a focus now needs to be put rather on the output than on the face time. And what I'm referring to in terms of that is now it's no longer going to be seen as the first person in the office and the last person to leave.
So in your opinion,
measurement for commitments.
Sorry, I've got a tickle. In your opinion, a productivity model is going to be crucial in terms of looking at, because obviously the 9 to 5, I'm in the office, therefore I'm working kind of mentality will no longer exist, because at no point are you in the office, or especially if you're remote working. So it really will become a productivity model that we'd have to look at in terms of how to structure our workflow. Is there anything that Compliance Hub has sort of developed or built around that as yet, or is that sort of in the pipeline as we speak?
It's most definitely in the pipeline, because obviously, like I did say right at the beginning, employee engagement is one of my real interests, as is performance management. So definitely, we're always working on innovative ideas and all of that kind of thing. So definitely something in the pipeline. So watch the space as we launch something in the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic. And you spoke about a shift. I mean, what sort of shifts have you experienced in the industry from managers in terms of what's happened during this time?
I think definitely, and I can see this both within Compliance Hub and within a lot of the clients that I currently deal with, and in their suppliers, they've actually commented about this. Saw a nice quote the other day. It said that chief CEOs can actually now be referred to in a lot of companies as the chief empathy officers. And I think that's been very true. There's been a lot more
That's a great quote.
Of relationships just within the workplace now. We have had a lot more time to have focused conversations, team conversations, one-on-one, even though it have been through online platforms. I mean, we seem to do everything online, from our book clubs to our gym to our therapy sessions to our happy hours, everything we do online. But I think we really in the workplace have prioritized relationships. And I think that has been vitally important for the workplace.
I completely agree with you. I think there's been a definite slant towards an intimacy between management and employee that has taken place, even though it's online. In a weird way, we've sort of got more face time with our managers and more face time with influential people within our organization, from bottom level employees to top level employees. There seems to be a leveling out of managerial engagement, and that's been quite great. Again, from an intimacy level, I mean, we see in many organizations boys clubs forming, and I mean that's the common phrase for it. I think that's sort of dwindling away during this time, in that we can now interact directly with our management. Even though it is over the platforms. And I think a lot of companies have taken the stance of smaller groups as opposed to large gatherings because of bandwidth and things. So there's certainly been a positive slant to that has come out of this in terms of how people interact with their managers.
Most definitely.
Do you think then that the black sheep being COVID could possibly be the best thing that has happened to or for employee engagement?
Definitely. I mean, I think it has had its challenges, but I think just looking at some research that I have been looking through when I've either attended webinars or been reading articles, some things have come to mind. Employers have been more protective over their employees. I think none of us can deny the fact that every day we are thinking numerous times about our own personal financial position and the financial position of the organization which we work for. But I think a lot of employers have taken steps to be able to assist their employees with this, because there have been financial means available, or financial systems, benefit systems like the TERS applications, and they have worked. Companies have received the money to be able to pay that over to their employees. I think salaries in companies may have been cut, but then employees have received either flexible hours back or something like that. So I think as much as possible, a lot of companies, without generalizing, have managed to still assist employees as far as possible in terms of, financially assisting them through various means. Not necessarily financially assisting them in terms of giving them additional money, but in terms of flexible working hours or those kinds of things. I definitely think they've protected them.
What's been great about that, this undertaking and call it a transition, is that employees have certainly acknowledged the stresses that senior management are under in terms of dealing with some of these issues. And I think there has been an element of a sort of more global understanding or holistic understanding of an organization, where employees, even though there is a strain on many personal individuals, there has been a complete understanding about the situation that we're in, and an understanding that it is not about today's revenue in many cases, but actually the survival of the organization and the individual's job in the long run. I mean, we're all under the same stresses and pressures. I'd hate to be a CEO right now, I must be honest, but for sure, there's definitely an engagement that has probably never been seen before. I think it's quite a historic engagement from the employee to the employer in acknowledging the stress that the business is under and the difficulties. It's no longer about me, but it is about the collective. And if the collective fail, everybody fails together. But if the collective succeed, we all succeed together. And there's certainly a trend towards that I've noticed within organizations, that people are really just embracing the fact that their managers are doing the best that they can, and really just understanding that the situation is difficult, not only for them, but actually for everybody, which has been a great, again, I use the word intimacy between the employee and the employer.
I agree with you. Really, it has. And I think it's been quite encouraging, actually, in terms of the dynamic of the workplace. So that's why if there can be one thing that can come out of this, even though it really has not been easy for any of us, I think that, and if it's had to be a pandemic, there really has been global transformation from it. And that's why I see it as the black sheep, but I also see that it has going to have a massive impact on the employee engagement within the HR world.
I actually
we mustn't look at this as.
I saw a quote the other day as well that said we must stop calling it the COVID-19 pandemic, but rather the COVID-19 opportunity, which I thought was quite powerful in its nature. So and it's so true in terms of what you're saying, that there are just so many opportunities available right now to engage in a stronger, better, and more productive orientated way, and also enable that work-life balance that everybody talks about but nobody actually engages in. And I think there's definitely opportunity in that.
So I think my thing is we need to take advantage of it right now, especially in the workplace with our employee engagement from HR practitioner sides, the policies, procedures, the employment contracts, just really get our HR departments up to speed, that kind of thing. And don't let the COVID-19 or coronavirus, the black sheep, whatever you'd like to refer it to, be a scapegoat in your company for things not being done. Let it be an opportunity. Let it be something that can transform your company. I really would like to encourage all of you to do that. So on every level, I really think that it's a massive opportunity for all of us.
Well, Tiffany, thank you very much. We're out of time, but thank you very much for joining us. I think your insight has been great. If anybody wants to engage with you on a personal level, again, your email is available in the subscription below, and they can connect with you directly to Compliance Hub as well. But thank you so much for your time, expertise, and knowledge. Hopefully we can all take something positive away from it and really just get that productivity up. I think that's probably the underlying message is we need to just keep working and keep moving forward. We can't let this get us down. We have to strive for better through these difficult times.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Cheers now.
Okay.
Guys, that was Tiffany from Compliance Hub. Tiffany, thanks very much. I'm going to just quickly hang up on Tiffany. Cheers, Tiffany. Guys, that was Tiffany from Compliance Hub, sharing her insights in terms of keeping the workflow up and productivity, some of the challenges that we're going to be facing within the HR space, and making sure that, I suppose the message is, let's make sure that our compliance, that our procedures are up to date and that we know where we're at and what we're doing so that the backlash doesn't affect us. Guys, thank you very much for joining us at HR Celebrity today. This has been episode 1. Again, the idea is to really showcase some of the businesses out there, showcase the talents, showcase professionals, and embrace our industry and grow our industry through a difficult time. I really appreciate everybody who tuned in this morning. Thank you, and I really hope that we have a great time going forward. Guys, this will be available at 3 o'clock on Thursday. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified of what's happening going forward. And other broadcasts that are coming in and other guests that we will be having on this channel. So please, I look forward to really catching up, and leave some comments below. It was exciting and a great start. Thank you very much to everybody who partaked.